what's up, VC? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel. Time for another hard rock and heavy metal update. Just showing what I've been spinning this week as I've been working. Pretty good mix of stuff here between straight up metal, a little bit of melodic hard rock, melodic metal. So let's just kind of jump in with one of the all-time thrash classics. It's actually funny, I forgot I bought this. I was talking to Scott on the phone the other day, and we were talking about the recent Testament represses, and I mentioned that the only one that I haven't gotten yet was Legacy, and I was incorrect. I actually did have it. Pulled this out and gave it a few spins. Love this album. Just one of the all-time great debut albums. I mean, they've been such a force since this came out, and just so many great songs on here. The Haunting, I still absolutely love. They still play that one from time to time live. Burnt Offerings, First Strike Still Deadly is still an all-time favorite of mine. This one was, I believe it was one of the Rocktober releases from last year, and this one is on the dark green vinyl. I don't know how well you can see it. Sounds awesome though. I highly recommend picking up any of these Testament represses. Every one of them that I've spun so far sounds amazing. I already gave this one a few spins. This one will get a few more spins before it goes up into the collection there. Next up, speaking a little bit of melodic metal. I've actually had this on CD for, God, a decade and a half. I actually think that I have I think I have a Japanese pressing of this one on CD as well. Always really like this one though. They get a little cheesy at times, but still a great album. This is, I believe it was their debut, but this is Rough Cut. Really nice shot of the band there. Nothing says 80s like those outfits. These guys, what year was this? 85. Guys were definitely worshipping at the altar of Motley Crue and a couple of other bands at that point. Next up, this is one of those band albums I don't know how to feel about it. There's some songs I like. The B-sides are definitely heavier, or the songs on side B are definitely side B is definitely heavier than the A side. I do kind of like this album, but at the same time, every time I hear it, I'm so disappointed just based on their first few albums and how amazing they were compared to this. They were kind of going for the, it wasn't even like the glam sound. They were just going, it was just like this 80s rock almost that they were going for. I don't know. But this is The Cage from Tigers of Pantang. I see this all the time, and I usually pass by it. This was a promo copy. I picked it up for like $8. Otherwise, I probably would have kept just passing it by. I do really like the Tigers of Pantang, and unfortunately, this was a sort of a downhill march for them. I've heard their last few albums have been really good. I just can't bring myself to listen to them. Like I said, I do kind of like this one. There's a lot of songs on here I dig. And actually the one cover song that everybody hates, Love Potion No. 9, is actually one of the heavier songs on the album, which is the craziest thing on earth. But, you know, I just can't bring myself to listen to their last few albums, because once I got past this, the next album I really didn't like. And then after that, I just stopped listening to them. I stopped giving them a chances after that. Next up, German metalers. I'm trying to think what were the names? So you got Charlie Hune on lead vocals, and then Herman Frank. Herman Frank had come from Accept to this band, and this is Victory, and that's Victory Live. It's not the best live album, quality-wise, but you know, they are singing some of their hits. Charlie Hune's just got a great voice. I've always loved his vocals, and you know, Herman Frank Just always killing it on guitar. Next up, another just great album, 70s hard rock here. This is Nightman from Dirty Tricks. This is their second album. Still on the lookout for the first. I have never seen it before. I'm sure it's been repressed. I've got originals of this and the third album. Really dig both of them. I really want to hear that first album though, because everybody says that really is their best. But I don't want to take anything away from this album. This album is really good, just straight up 70s hard rock. What do we got next? This one, I got this one for cheap. I think I paid $6 or $7 for it. Trying to think. It had a couple of hits for them on here. This is not my favorite song or favorite album from the band. Still a few great songs. So we got Fight to Survive from White Lion. Now we're getting to some of the good stuff. So here we go. So I don't know if this is the first release from the New Combat Records, but this is a release from the New Combat Records, and this is an awesome release. I'm so glad that Dave Ellefson jumped on this. This is Sword live at the Hammersmith, 1987, I think. Yep. So this was actually recorded on cassette through a 4-track that was hooked up to the soundboard. There's a couple songs that are kind of rough, but as a whole, they did a great job of remastering this, and this is a really killer. If this is the first release from the New Combat, this is a great way to start it off. I've seen if there's a matrix number or something like that, but there's not. But here you go. Sword live at the Hammersmith. Highly, highly recommend picking this up. This just came out too. I believe last week or the week before. Definitely a must-have for all you Sword fans. Sword is just one of those bands, they didn't put out enough stuff, and they were so good. I mean, listen. I hope that they release this on vinyl. They haven't. I haven't heard. I looked. I don't see any information really about them doing so. But this is a must-have. Speaking of must-haves, man, this album is so good. I don't know what the name change was about. I've always loved the original names. However, I do like the album cover on this. But this is Motorhead, Death or Glory. There was one pressing where for some reason they changed the name to Death or Glory as opposed to calling it Bastards, which never made sense to me. I guess because there's a song on here called Death or Glory and there's not one called Bastards. This is such a great album though. This is one I highly, highly recommend picking up. Even if you're only a fan of Ace of Spades and that era of Motorhead, this album is so good. Born to Raise Hell is a song that they were doing when you hear live sets. That was almost always in their live set. Bad Woman, Lost in the Ozone is phenomenal. And this also has one of the darkest songs that Lemmy ever wrote, and it's Don't Let Daddy Kiss Me. It starts off as this really pretty acoustic song, and the lyrics are just so dark, and the song just is such a dark turn. Lemmy sounds phenomenal on this entire album, but he really sounds good on that song. Again, this is a 9.5 out of 10. This is such a good album. This would be in my top 4 or 5 Motorhead albums right there. Which is saying a lot because I love most of the Motorhead albums. Next up, I just pulled this one out to spin it. I showed this a few years ago when I first bought it. I showed it when I got it signed by Bob Kulick. But this is still such an underrated album. It's one of the heavier albums that Blackie did. But this is still not black enough. From Wasp, and again, I got it. That's Bob Kulick's signature there, who was guitar. It's kind of hard to see. There you go. You can kind of see the crow there. Really killer album. If you haven't heard this era of Blackie, or of Wasp. Highly recommend checking that one out. Next up, I was kind of stoked and then disappointed, but then ultimately really cool with it. This is an album. I thought I was buying the original pressing, an OG pressing. It turns out this is like a 2004, 2005 repress, which is not that huge of an issue. I kind of figured it out as soon as I pulled the vinyl out and could feel the weight of it. It was just too heavy to be from 1988. But this is the second album with Wino on vocals and guitar from Saint Vitus. This is Mournful Cries. And there is not a bad song on this album. It's got great artwork too. Just a killer album. Eye of the Dragon, or Dragon Time, I'm sorry, is so good. The Troll, Looking Glass, just such a great Doom album. Again, another one highly recommend picking up. Sorry, my allergies. As you can see, you can't really see it. The wall's all marked up. I got it all marked up and measured out to put my frames up. And then I'm building some shelves over here. And I got stacks of CDs and stuff all around me. And the dust is just kicking up everywhere. And it's really just setting off my allergies. Back with another Anthrax. Showed some Anthrax in the last, I showed Fistful of Metal in the last update. So I went from there a little earlier to their first EP, Armed and Dangerous. I've always loved this album. They still had that new wave of British metal, new wave of British heavy metal sound going on here. This was like the American version of that on this EP. And then you got Metal Thrash and Mad live, which you can't. It doesn't get a whole lot better than that. But I've always loved this. Actually, I need to get this on CD. I think there's a CD that's got a bunch of extra material and stuff too. I was actually kind of disappointed by this. I got it for a good price, and the vinyl is mint. I don't know if you can see it. You can see the waves. They listed it as VG Plus across the board, so they kind of undergraded the vinyl, but they overgraded the sleeve, and it drives me nuts. So now I got to find a nice sleeve with beat up vinyl or something. I don't know. So I'm not paying paying 25 or 30 bucks, whatever it goes for now. I didn't pay that much for it, but next up, Swedish metal band, new wave of traditional metal. This is my favorite album from the band so far. I haven't heard their last couple albums, so they may have a better one. But this is Lightbringer from Ram. This is one that Scott Waters got me to check out. He kept talking about him, so finally I picked up a split that they did. I don't remember who it was with, and really dug it. And this album on silver vinyl is phenomenal. I played this one through 2 or 3 times the other day. I just couldn't get enough of it. Especially, was it the B-side? Yeah, I think it was a B-side. The front, the whole album is great, but I was really digging the B-side. I don't remember if it was Blood God or Ghost Pilot. One of those was just really, I was really digging it. A really great album, though. This was just repressed last year, I think, so you can get it for a relatively good price. And you know, High Roller just knows how to do it. They do such a good job on these reissues that they're doing. Next up, I bought this when it came out. Finally got around to spinning it. I've had an original copy of this for years. I actually had. Sorry about that. I actually had multiple original copies, but this is the 598 EP. This is the blackened reissue from earlier this year. I just got the black vinyl one. Nothing special. Sounds amazing though. I think this sounds better than the original pressing. Since Metallica took over the rights to their music and they've released it all on their own label, every single one that I've done, I've A-B'd with the original. The blackened sounds better. The only one I haven't done it with is with their debut, with Kill 'Em All. And I do still have an original press. I've sold all my original pressings because the blackened sounds better, and I can sell those for $100 and buy a whole bunch more vinyls. So Kill 'Em All is the only one I still have an original pressing of, and I just haven't gotten around to ABing it yet. Next up, an all-time favorite of mine. This is literally one of my all-time favorite albums. I can't get enough of this album. I've listened to it probably 500 times, and I'll listen to it 500 more. What can I say? Just one of the all-time great groove metal albums. Los Exorcisto, Devil's Music Volume 1. And eventually I'll do a White Zombie video talking about their whole discography now that I've got all of their stuff on vinyl. The only thing I don't have on vinyl, I think, is Music to Strip to. Music to Swing to. You guys know what I'm talking about. Next up, it's funny. I was just talking to Scott. This was a gift from him, and I was actually playing this in the background as we were chatting back and forth. This is Steel City Schizophrenia from Black Sabbath. This is a King Biscuit UK. What do they call it? England Biscuit or British Biscuit or something. I don't remember what they called it. But this was from the King Biscuit Flower Hour in the UK. And it's just a really killer boot. This is from 74, I think. No, I'm sorry, 77 and 78. So towards the end of the first iteration of Black Sabbath. But, I mean, Symptoms of the Universe, War Pigs, Gypsy, Children of the Grave, Snowblind, Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, and Paranoid. Actually, Children of the Grave was from 76, so it's from 76 to 78. Children of the Grave and Black Sabbath are two of my all-time favorite heavy metal songs, and they just sound phenomenal here. That was real limited, too. There were only 100 of them pressed, I believe, and I know, or I'm pretty sure Scott got one for himself, too. Next up, just a classic. On this album, they were, you know, these guys are considered power metal, and they are power metal. At this time, they were almost had that new wave of British heavy metal sound. I love it though. It was more of a 70s hard rock with the power metal type vocals, a la early Rob Halford, you know. But this is the debut from Manowar. Such a great album. Just pulled this one out again to listen to. I was just in the mood for some Manowar. I actually pulled out their second one too. I'll give that a spin, so you may see that in a later update. Just such a killer album though. If you haven't checked out Manowar, this is the one I would start with. They just did such a great job on this. And yes, over the top heavy metal cliches. A lot of those cliches, or what we consider cliches now though, they started that stuff back then. Let's see what we got. All right, Nazareth. This is just an upgrade copy. I had a really rough copy of this. This is as Nazareth. I believe this was 80s. Yeah, 1980. So they were moving more the, I don't want to say pop, but almost going kind of a pop hard rock sound. Still a great album. Still some great songs though. But we got Malice in Wonderland. I've always loved that title too. But I found this really nice copy. It's near mint other than the corner cut. And the last copy I had was VG, like a high VG at best. Next up, this is one I've wanted for a long time. I had heard clips of it, and I've always loved it. One of my local record stores have it, but they want like 60 bucks for it because it's sealed, which makes no sense because this is a $10 album. But this is Wasted, Vices, and this is Danny Way. Is it Danny Way? Pete Way. I don't know why I keep doing that. You got Pete Way from UFO. One of the other guys, Paul Raymond from UFO, is also on. I believe Paul Raymond is in UFO right now, if I remember correctly. But this is just a great, great album. I actually thought this band was a one and done, and then I was looking online. They've got like 15 albums. I was really shocked that this is the only one I've ever... And I see this one pretty regularly. But I finally found it in really good condition, and I paid $8 or $9 for it. You know. Next up, this is one I just ran across for a good price. I had never heard any of the 80s output from this particular band. This is their debut. I was more familiar with the singer's punk stuff and then with his stuff from the 90s. But this is Do It from the Rollins Band. This is 1988, so this is right after he left Black Flag. This is kind of a transition album. It's not quite hardcore. It's not quite hard rock yet. It's just kind of in the middle there. Really good album, though, with some really good tracks. If you're a fan of Henry Rollins or the Rollins Band, this is one I definitely recommend picking up. Some great songs on here. I'm trying to think. The A-side is New Song. Side 2 is Live in Holland. But, man, the Wreckage is so good. Really, really good album, though. And then last but not least, just an all-time classic. When I saw these guys live, I don't remember if it was earlier this year or late last year, they still play 2 or 3 songs off of this album. It's still part of their regular set. This is All for One from Raven. Just such an amazing album. I think this is the next one I'm going to get signed when they come out here next time. But Mind Over Metal, Run Silent, or was it Run Silent 1D? I know that they did Hung, Drawn, and Quartered live, and that was the first time that they had done Hung, Drawn, and Quartered since they toured this album. So I know they did that one. I want to say they did Run Silent, Run Deep too, but I could be wrong. But I know for sure they did Mind Over Metal and Hung, Drawn, and Quartered. Just a killer album, though. And all of those songs I just mentioned, just top-notch metal. That's pretty much it, though, guys. Definitely check out the Live at the Hammersmith from Sword. And that's it. I'll get something up. So I actually have a country music update that I recorded like a month and a half ago and forgot about. So that'll be the next one that I upload. But take care, everybody. I'll see you soon.